Cash to Carbonella-based hospital to deliver this presentation today. If you have any questions, please ask or write in the chat box at the end of the lecture. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Ziad.
Anantha, would you enable me to share the slides?
Yeah. Yes, sir. 1 minute, sir. The host.
Okay, thanks. Can you see the slides?
Yes, sir. We can see.
Okay. Can you all hear me clearly?
Can hear you clearly.
Right. Basically, what I'm going to talk to you all about is the menopause and the role of HRT in the management of menopausal symptoms. The layout would be for this topic would be I'll be briefly touching on the significance of menopause and the physiological and clinical manifestation. And we'll just talk a little bit more about terminology, the few terms that we use in this during this to describe the menopause and the period around the menopause, and then overview of the HRT. Now, why is it menopause important? Now, if you look at the figures over the past century or so, the life expectancy of women have gone up, and their age of menarche, they attained menarche earlier. But the age of menopause has remained unchanged. So, which means that nearly up to about 40% of these women spend their lifetime in the postmenopausal period. Now, menopause is not just absence or deficiency of estrogen. It's a very complex endocrine process which takes you through your reproductive years to perimenopause to menopause. Of course, this brings a lot of changes which can be physiological and emotional changes, but quite challenging and interfere with your quality of life. Added to that, this can be aggravated if you have pre-existing comorbidities due to aging or unhealthy lifestyle. Now, in summary, without going into in detail what happens in menopause, the physiological impact of this endocrine transition would be a drop in gonadal steroid hormones produced by the ovaries. Now, that will affect your neurotransmitters, the trophic states of your collagen fibers, endothelial function, and the estrogen sensitive epithelial surface. Due to these changes, we get clinical manifestation, which can be broadly divided into acute clinical manifestation, medium-term clinical manifestation, and long-term clinical manifestation. Now, when we talk about acute clinical manifestation, we know the key feature would be the cessation of menstruation. On top of that, majority of women will have vasomotor symptoms, which are hot flushes and night sweats. Usually they are self-limiting, but they can last up to 5 to 7 years. Then the mood swings, panic attack, depression, they can manifest in acute stage, but mind you, these can go into medium to long-term effects also. And headaches also can appear around this time. The medium-term manifestation would be the changes due to estrogen deficiency. As you all know, the vaginal epithelium is estrogen sensitive, and the absence of estrogen leads to vaginal dryness and then dyspareunia. Reduction in libido is also something that we see around this time, and that is mainly due to dyspareunia, but also can be due to the testosterone deficiency around the perimenopausal and menopausal period. As you all know, because of the changes in the vaginal epithelium, the vaginal pH urethritis, and that leads to colonization of the vagina with enterobacteria, and that can lead to recurrent UTI. Also, not just the vaginal epithelium, the distal part of the urothelium, the urethral distal part of the urethra is also estrogen sensitive, and lack of estrogen can lead to atrophic urethritis. And also due to the diminished mucosal seal, loss of compliance and irritation, they can either have de novo stress or urge incontinence, or it can get aggravated if they have the pre-existing condition. And also the hormonal changes affect your skin, hair loss, nail, and people can come with generalized body aches and pain, which you can't really attribute to any other physical reason. These manifestations can continue and can become long-term effects. Like I said before, your changes in the bone, skin, nail, and the endothelial changes, which predispose to development of hypertension and multiple sclerosis, and also the effect on neurotransmitters, which can affect cognition, mood, and panic attacks, palpitation, like manifestation of somatic symptoms. Now, when we talk about menopause, there are a lot of terms involved around it. Right? I mean, I will take you through a few terms that we use commonly. Menopause, in most of the cases, is not an abrupt event. It's what we call a menopausal transition. It's where the ovaries start to fail until the last menstrual period. Now, this can happen over a 4-year period, but as you all know, duration is very much shorter in smokers. Having said that, 1 in 10 women will have abrupt cessation of their menstruation. When we use the term perimenopause, is the term around the menopause, where we consider the time of ovarian depletion until 12 months after the last menstrual period. Menopause marks the cessation, and that's the last menstrual period. Average is around 7 years, but then again, having said that, it can vary depending on which part of the world you are looking at. But having a family history, type 1 diabetes, smoking, we know are well-recognized risk factors for early onset of menopause. Postmenopause is a retrospective diagnosis where we consider 12 months of amenorrhea after the last menstrual period. Primary ovarian insufficiency is when the menopause occurs before the age of 40 years. It's not very common. The overall incidence is around 1%. Now, we'll now move on to the chart. Now, hormone replacement therapy is not something new. The synthetic estrogen was initially discovered around 1920s, but it was not until about 1940s it was used in clinical practice. But even after start being used in clinical practice, the demand went up around in 1960 because people thought that estrogen is the cure for menopause. And that led to indiscriminate use of unopposed estrogen. As you all know, if the patient is having a uterus, if you give unopposed estrogen, that increase the risk of having endometrial cancer. And as expected, decade later, there were drastic increase in endometrial cancers and the demand for HRT dropped. Again, with the introduction of combined HRT, both containing estrogen and progesterone, the demand again went up. But in 2002 and 2003, these two landmark studies, Women Health Initiative and the Million Women Study, because of the increased risk of cardiovascular risk and the increased risk of breast cancer, again the demand for HRT dropped. Even the prescribers were not keen on prescribing, and the patients were also not keen on using it. And around that time in UK, around 2 million patients were using HRT, and the last period of less than 1 million after publish of these studies. But having said that, these studies, even though initially uh, showed a negative effect with the use of HRT. Subsequent reanalysis of these two studies showed there are a lot of shortcomings, and then there were so many publications after that looking into overall impact of the using of HRT. So is HRT good or bad for us? Right? Now, as we all know, estrogen is proven in reduction of vasomotor symptoms in most of the women, but it does not give immediate relief. It can take up to 4 weeks to see a beneficial effect, and this is superior to non-hormonal treatment like we can use clonidine, SSRI, SNRI for the treatment of same condition, but estrogen remain the most promising treatment. And it also helps the urogenital symptoms, vaginal dryness and sexual function. Vaginal dryness can lead to dyspareunia and improvement of the estrogen, especially here you can use topical estrogen, leads to improvement of sexual function and improvement of vaginal activity. Like I mentioned before, because of the colonization of the vaginal flora with the enterobacteria, there is an increased incidence of recurrent UTI, and also the changes can predispose to urinary incontinence and correction of vaginal pH. So the most of the urogenital symptoms we can manage with topical treatment rather than systemic treatment, which I will talk to you about later. In addition to that, it improves mood and sleep disturbance. Sleep disturbance is actually improved mainly by alleviating your vasomotor symptoms, and also has a direct effect on low mood, irritability, and anxiety. But having said that, HRT is not the first-line treatment if you have a diagnosed mood disorder, depression. HRT is not the first-line treatment that has to be dealt with separately. Now, it is used in osteoporosis to reduce the risk of osteoporosis, especially in younger patients. When I mentioned about younger patients, is those who went to premature ovarian failure before the age of 40 years. As you all know, it suppresses the osteoclast activity and stimulates the bone formation. The repeat analysis of the previous two studies I mentioned and all the other studies, what they have found in the cardiovascular risk is actually reduced. And the benefit is more if you start HRT within 10 years of menopause or less than 60 years of age. Also, they have noted low risk of colorectal cancer, but current data does not suggest routine use of HRT to prevent colorectal cancer. And lastly, all these measures will improve the quality of life. But it is not without risk also. Now, the venous thromboembolism risk is 3 times more with oral HRT. I will tell you why further down. But it is not seen in non-oral HRT where you deliver estrogen like transdermal patches, vaginal rings. And the risk is higher in the first 2 years, and it drops to background risk after 2 years. Still, even though the risk is high, the absolute risk is low when you use in patients who are less than 60 years of age. Also, you have to remember the VTE risk. You have to consider the patient's other factors also, like obesity, smoking, use of alcohol, because those are all going to be compound risk factors having the VTE risk. Stroke is also increased slightly, but that is made for ischemic stroke, and also depending on the dose that you are seeing. And like in VT, it's not seen with transdermal delivery of estrogen. And also the increases risk after the age of 60 years, and also with the use of Tibolone. Again, I will talk to you about Tibolone towards the end of my presentation. Endometrial cancer risk is high if you use an estrogen-only HRT in patients with the intact uterus. Right? Having progesterone delivered at least 10 to 14 days per cycle will reduce this risk. Ovarian cancer risk is very small, and with 5 years of HRT use, we will have one additional case per 1,000 users, and one additional death per 1,700 users among all ages, and this is considered as a non-significant increase. What about the breast cancer? Now, we all know that the combined HRT will increase the breast cancer after 5 years, 400 cases per 1,000. But still, that increase is less than what is caused by smoking 10 cigarettes per day, alcohol, and obesity. And if you use estrogen alone, the risk is less. Also, it also depends on the type of progesterone you use. We know that the Micronized progesterone and dydrogesterone reduces the risk compared to the other type of progesterone. But there is no increased risk of breast cancer in women who are taking HRT when they are under the age of 51 years. Now, having the next question would be who needs to be treated. Now, basically, if you put them into three broad categories, can be women who are having menopausal symptoms, but you need to assess the risk-benefit ratio before you start HRT. And the premature ovarian insufficiency either can be due to natural cause or it can be due to surgical cause. And under the age of 50 years and at risk of osteoporotic fractures. So these are the three groups of people, if you take broadly, where we can start HRT. There are certain situations which should not start HRT. Now, if you have vaginal bleeding, which you have not identified the cause, you should not start HRT until it has been sorted. Active liver disease is a contraindication. Estrogen-sensitive breast cancer, history of endometrial cancer, arterial venous thromboembolic disorders, and thrombophilias and active thrombophlebitis. Because the latter part, all what happens is the estrogen can increase your coagulation factors and it can predispose to having a ischemic stroke or a venous thromboembolism. Well, what are the options available? Now we can deliver HRT as oral therapy or patches. There are creams and gels that we can use, nasal sprays, local devices, the progesterone release in IUS, or most of you will be familiar with the Mirena, and the estrogen releasing vaginal rings. Now, little bit of delivery methods. The transdermal estrogen mimics the most physiological delivery method. Like I said, it avoids the gut and liver first part effect metabolism. So we know the amount of estrogen that is being delivered to body is more or less constant. It also avoids the first pass effect of the liver, because of the estrogen, the liver, the procoagulant factors can increase and which can predispose to having a thromboembolic event. The transdermal estrogen does not affect your lipid profile, but it's more expensive than tablet, and sometimes you can get sensitive reaction to adhesives and alcohols in the patch. The oral estrogen, on the other hand, cost effective. It is acceptable, but it increased the triglyceride level of the lipid profile. Because of the first pass metabolism, you need higher doses to treat, and there can be variation in absorption and metabolism. It increased the hepatic protein synthesis, and all tablets contain lactose. Vaginal estrogen preparations, we have creams. What we have available here is the Premarin cream, but time to time it's very difficult to find. And vaginal tablets. These are primarily used when the patients are having localized urogenital symptoms, and very little systemic effect. So generally you don't need to monitor them, and does not treat progesterone replacement for the endometrial protection. But having said that, if somebody is on topical estrogen and develop any vaginal bleeding, those patients needs to be properly investigated. Now we'll talk about general principles of prescription. Now there are either you have to decide whether you are going to treat this patient with estrogen alone or combined HRT. Now patient with without uterus, patient who had a hysterectomy, you can treat with estrogen alone without adding progesterone because we know there is no risk of endometrial cancer due to endometrial proliferation because of the unopposed estrogen. But if the patient is having a uterus, it has to be always combined with the progesterone either cyclically or sequenced continuously. When you are giving cyclically, at least it has to give cover 10 to 14 days of the monthly cycle. Now, the second question comes whether to give the HRT sequentially or to give as a continuous combined HRT. The principle here, how we work is during the perimenopause, we give sequential HRT. That is, if the up to 1 year of the menopause till the last period, or if the patient gone into premature ovarian failure up to 2 years, we give initially sequential HRT. After sequential HRT, or if the patient is 1 or 2 years after the last menstrual period, there is a place for continuous combined HRT or use of Tibulol. Once you start HRT, patients can have irregular bleeding or have a progesterone side effect. Now, that can be addressed with the type of progesterone that you use or the change in the delivery method of the progesterone. And sometimes erratic bleeding can occur in the first 3 to 6 months period after starting HRT, and that is not something to be alarmed about. And you can wait without going into extensive investigations. And if it persists after 6 months, you need further investigation to rule out any underlying pathology. The intrauterine system or the Mirena coil can be used for endometrial protection, which has very minimal systemic absorption and systemic side effect. But having said that, if you are using the coil for endometrial protection in HRT, you need to replace it in 4 years. But any other time, sometimes you use for conditions like endometriosis, adenomyosis, or as added benefit as a contraceptive device. In those situations, you can keep it for 5 years. But if you're using as a device mainly with the main intention of as a HRT, the device needs to be replaced in 4 years' time. And like I said, the topical estrogen is advisable for first-line therapy with vaginal atrophy because the urothelium is very sensitive to estrogen, and you don't need to deliver a higher dose of systemic estrogen or mainly the oral estrogen to get that effect. By giving the vaginal estrogen, the desired effects are achieved, and also with very minimum side effects. The added advantage is you don't need to add a progesterone, and you usually don't need to monitor the endometrium unless patient develops unscheduled bleeding. Also remember, HRT is not a contraceptive. The doses that we use in HRT is very low doses, and they are not strong enough to suppress ovulation. So this is a important point if you are using HRT in young patients in premature ovarian failure, because we know sometimes even though the ovaries have failed, there can be spontaneous activity of the ovaries time to time, and they can have unexpected pregnancies. So in a younger patient, if you need to replace hormone, this is something that we need to consider because HRT is not a contraceptive. You can't use oral HRT as a contraceptive. But having said that, if you're delivering progesterone through a intrauterine system or a Mirena device, that will give an added advantage as working as a contraceptive also. And once you start HRT, first you need to assess this patient and do a risk assessment initially to decide how safe to start HRT and what type of HRT you are going to give. Are you going to give estrogen alone, or are you going to give combined? If you are going to give combined, are you going to give a sequential, or is it going to be a continuous? So a lot of decision needs to be considered at the very beginning. Once you start HRT, you need to review them in 3 months' time, because sometimes the method that you have chosen to deliver the HRT, or the doses that you have used, or the type of progesterone that you have used may not give the desired effect for the patient. So you initially need to review them in 3 months' time to see how they are doing, how the improvement of the symptoms, the side effects, whether you need to be changed, stop, or whether the patient needs further assessment. Once you have established that, then you need to review them annually, or before that, if they develop a new symptoms, like unscheduled vaginal bleeding, or any other thing which I will talk to you about in the next 2 slides. And also remember, you have to tell this patient that this is not a quick fix, meaning the HRT will take time to give measurable improvement in the system. Like in the previous slide, I told you, even the vasomotor symptoms, if you start, it will take about nearly 1 month to give a measurable clinical outcome. So you have to tell this patient, once you start, that you have to wait for some time to see the benefit. Otherwise, there's no point changing the dose or the delivery method in a very short interval without really giving time to see what you have started and worked or not. Also remember, you should not abruptly stop the HRT, because in most cases, once you stop abruptly, the symptoms will tend to recover. So you need to phase out slowly, and sometimes when you're down, reducing it, time to time you may have to go back in the previous dose, come back, like step ladder-wise reduction. Now the question is when to stop HRT. Now, if the patient is symptom-free for HRT after 1 or 2 years, you can consider stopping the HRT. Or if the patient is been on HRT for longer than 5 years, or in the patient with premature menopause or premature ovarian failure after the age of 51. Why we take 51 is we consider the natural age of menopause at 51, and we continue to replace till the age of 51. But having said that, there is no maximum duration for women to take HRT. And the reduction should be gradually over 3 to 6 months period. And once you start reducing, if the symptoms rebound, you may have to go up again and then come back. Remember, nearly 50% of the patient, the symptoms tend to recur once you start to reduce the doses. And there are a few instances where you need to stop immediately. This is the previous slide what I talked about is the general principle of stopping, and this is the situation who is on HRT. If you come across this condition, you need to stop HRT immediately. Sudden severe chest pain or sudden breathlessness, both can be due, these can be due to thromboembolism. Unexplained swelling or severe pain in the calf, again due to VTE. Serious neurological effect. Hepatitis, jaundice, hepatomegaly, especially those who are on oral HRT, because we know because of the first part metabolism and first part effect of the liver. If the blood pressure goes up, systolic blood pressure above 160 and diastolic blood pressure 95. If the blood pressure is well controlled, you can use it. This is I'm talking about the patients who have hypertension which is not being controlled. Prolonged immobility, you all know that the prolonged immobility will increase the risk for a VTE. And the new risk factors. This is what I told you about this annual review. Because if you start somebody on HRT, with aging, the people will accumulate new risk factors. which may not be there at the time of starting HRT. So unless you get them down in periodically and time to time, every visit you have to do a fresh risk-free assessment. You can't go by the very first assessment. Because down the line they may have developed hypertension, they may have developed some other comorbidity. Then you need to consider whether the current regime is suitable with the new comorbidity that have appeared. So that is the importance of assessing for new risk factors periodically. Now, coming to my last two slides, a little bit on Tibolone. Now, Tibolone is a selective estrogen receptor modulator which has estrogenic, progesterogenic, and weak androgenic activity. And it is given as a continuous tablet, and you don't need to add progesterone separately. And also can be used safely in patients with intact uterus. But with Tibolone, there can be a small increase of stroke, especially if you use, especially after the age of 60. Endometrial cancer, breast cancer, also slightly increased. This increased risk is, the risk is not very significant. But Tibolone is less effective than combined HRT in improving the menopausal symptoms. The other advantage is if somebody who had a history of endometriosis or fibroid, using Tibolone does not flare up those clinical situations. So that in that sense, Tibolone is helpful. Also remember, we don't use Tibolone in first instance because Tibolone is going to give as a continuous tablet. So the principle is during the perimenopausal period, you use sequential HRT, and in the postmenopause after 1 year, or in premature ovarian failure after 2 years only, that you start using continuous Tibolone, continuous HRT. So since the Tibolone is continuous form of HRT, we don't start in this period. We usually start either 1 or 2 years of last menstrual period. That brings to the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ziad. Are there any questions?
Can I speak for ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I would like to know what are the other brands or generics of HRTs that we can consider of the types. And the other thing, it has any effect on cosmetic, like because of its replaced hormones, whether this can be used for cosmetic effects as well.
Okay, now if we take estrogen, we have in Sri Lanka, we have oral estrogen, both the 1 milligram and 2 milligram tablet. We have topical estrogen, the estrogen cream. Estrogen patches were there time to time, but not freely available, and I have not come across vaginal ring in Sri Lanka. When you talk about progesterone, we mainly have oral progesterone, like the norepinephrine, and then the Mirena device, the intrauterine system. Other than that, we have other hormone preparations. Now, for example, your Yasmin, Diane 35, those we don't primarily use as a method of hormone replacement because the hormone content, the doses are much higher, and in the hormone replacement therapy, the main principle is to keep to the minimum dosage. So those products we use for other problems like in reproductive years, the menstrual irregularities, sometimes because of the androgenic symptoms that we see in, for example, in polycystic ovarian syndrome. So for those period that we use, and depending on the progesterone in the product, you will have cosmetic benefits also. You know, the anti-androgenic progesterone or less androgenic progesterone will have beneficial effects on the acne, hirsutism. But again, having said that, to see a benefit, it takes long time, nearly 4 to 6 months of treatment. It will not be evident or manifest with using 1 or 2 months of this product.
So can HRT be used in a female diagnosed with estrogen receptor negative breast cancer safely? Can it be
Sorry.
given? Estrogen receptor negative breast cancer ladies, can they be given HRT? Since the risk is more for the ladies with estrogen positive receptor breast cancer.
Yes. But yes, if the estrogen receptor status is negative, yes, you can use it.
And for how long, if so?
The duration that you're asking.
Yes.
You can. There's no upper limit when you start HRT, like I said. But then again, now say while on HRT, if the clinical picture changes, or say the problem with becomes monitoring. Now, if you use estrogen alone, it does not interfere with the density of the breast tissue. But the moment that you use a progesterone, that increase the density of the breast tissue, and depending on what type of surgery they had, and the monitoring will be difficult. The mammograms, the ultrasound will be difficult to interpret.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
So what happens is with combining HRT, that increases the density because of the progesterone that you use mainly, and that will make it difficult to interpret the mammogram. So depending on what type of surgery patients have had, and that may be challenging with the follow-up. So the best would be is to, in that situation, have to liaise with the specialist that is primarily treating for the breast cancer, and then discuss the option of starting, because once you start, the patient usually will be monitored periodically. And if the assessment is going to be challenging, or the interpretation of the findings is going to be difficult, that's going to put the managing the situation will be difficult. So I think it would be best now, if somebody comes to me asking for that, I usually write to the specialist who is treating for the cancer and ask for their opinion as well.
One more question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, sure.
Now, when we decide on the HRTs, do we have to always give like menstrual free ones, or like if it is more effective, can they go for like, are the periods occurring months like Lyman or anything more effective, or like the free ones are better, where you don't get menstruation? There are like 28-day cycles and 21-day cycles.
Yes, you can either you can go to 21-day cycles, or you can go to 3-month cycles. It depending on how the patient wants. Some people feel if they don't have a period monthly, it's not normal, and some people are okay with not having menstruation. So if you are going for a cyclical preparations, you have the choice of having monthly or 3 monthly. But the principle that we practice at the moment is, if somebody is in perimenopause, you start with sequential regime. And once the patient is 12 months after the menopause, or in the event of premature ovarian failure, 2 months after, 2 years after the last menstrual period, we change them to continuous regime.
If they are on perimenopause, and how do we know they have reached the menopausal stage if they are on the pills? I mean HRT.
It's difficult. It's difficult because absolutely there's no way of knowing that if they are on HRT, because of the hormones that you are giving, your FSH is also not going to be very reliable, and the patient will not meet the symptoms. So usually that's why in premature ovarian failure, because we have this problem, we continue them on replacement until the natural age of menopause, 51. And then after that, we can consider reducing it. But having said that, if we are delivering the hormone as tablets or any other form, it will be difficult to clinically decide whether the patient has reached menopause or not, and your FSH may not be reliable because of the fluctuations. You might end up with a normal reports also.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hasim Ziad. I would like to thank you for the fabulously great lecture you gave. We truly appreciate it, having taken your valuable time and effort for this delightful presentation, despite the short notice. I sincerely thank you again, Dr. Ziad. On behalf of our college as well, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for your active participation. I would also like to thank KEMA's Bayer Pharmaceuticals for the support they have shown in making this lecture a success. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.